Hi! Welcome to part 1 of my review featuring Quick and Classic, a light classic fantasy role-playing game. This role-playing game is a tribute or a homage to those role-playing games of yore, such as Tunnels and Trolls, the fighting fantasy game books. It has a very strong European roleplay style to it. Now, some of you could be thinking, well, we have deluxe Tunnels and Trolls and we have advanced fighting fantasy. Why should we be interested in Quick and Classic? That's because this is one of the quickest, the fastest systems when it comes to task resolution, combat resolution. When it comes to simplicity, it surpasses Advanced Fighting Fantasy and Tunnels and Trolls. Those games are excellent, I love them, but if you want something that could be played quite fast and with a large group of people, it can be played with any number of players, but because of its simplicity, minimal bookkeeping, and the super fast character creation process, I think this is a great role-playing game to play with perhaps 6 or 8 players. Now, let's talk about the quality of the PDF. My criticism is that it doesn't have bookmarks and no hyperlinks in the table of contents, so it's not going to be easy to navigate this PDF. However, it's only 68 pages long, so maybe you won't consider that to be too much of a big deal. But everything else is great. The graphic design, the layout is it's somewhat minimalistic, although you have beautiful black and white illustrations. The organization is great. The font is really easy on the eyes. This is one of the best fonts that I have seen in a role-playing game. The spacing between the lines and the paragraphs, it looks great. And the explanations in general, they are perfect. They are quite tongue-in-cheek at times, so it's going to be very easy for you to understand how to play this role-playing game. So overall, the quality is great, with that caveat that it doesn't contain bookmarks or hyperlinks. I think this document is going to be more enjoyable if you order it as print on demand or if you print it yourself. Remember to check out the link in the description below. Now let's talk about the contents. The book starts right away mentioning the inspiration and the purpose behind this role-playing game. Quick and Classic has an intentionally light rule system. This means that the master and players might at times have to agree on house rules that are not contained in the core rules of the game. The game master has the last word in these agreements, but you do have a structure. So if you like those role-playing games, where you solve combat and tasks by making a single roll, a simple roll, and the combat is resolved in a single round or in a few rounds, this is the game for you. And task resolution is also handled with great expediency. Now let's talk about how to play this role-playing game. You need the core rulebook, of course, and paper, pencil, a set of dice, your typical polyhedral dice. The adventure starts with the game master giving the players narrations and situations. During narrations, the game master or the master, as he or she is referred to in these rules, solely narrates events and descriptions to the players without asking for a response from the characters. Then you go to situations. The players decide what to do based on the game master's description. Every situation has its own difficulty, so the higher the value, the more difficult the situation, obviously, but there are also going to be some circumstances. For example, let's say that you encounter some really angry ghosts, and they have a difficulty of 3, but it is also impossible to negotiate with them. That means that if the players attempt some sort of diplomacy or try to reason with the ghosts, they are going to get attacked immediately. So it's not going to be easy to handle that situation unless you use some sort of magic or you go straight to combat right away. If your weapons are actually capable of damaging the ghosts, of course. So during any situation, be it sneaking, combat, climbing, convincing someone, doing some research, everything is handled with a single roll. Every character states his or her intention first. And if it's a very simple task, it could be an automatic success. Although there could be some automatic failures as well. If a character decides to jump down a cliff, maybe that character immediately gets hurt. So the character's actions are assigned to a category. These are broad categories such as combat, acrobatics, stealth, enigma, charm, threat, and resistance. They are pretty self-explanatory, with a few exceptions, like for example, Enigma is understanding magic, solving riddles, recalling knowledge. Threat is intimidation. Resistance is basically anything related to tests of strength, resistance to starvation, elements, and such. Each character has an ability score determined at the character's creation, and some preferred actions that depend on the character class. You have a simple table determining which die you can roll depending on your ability. A character uses his ability at full score when trying to solve a situation with a preferred action. Otherwise, only half the score is used. I think this is a more... well, it depends on the system, right? But in current times there is that popular advantage and disadvantage mechanic of rolling two 20-sided dice and choosing the lowest or the highest depending. But here, it's more about using your full score or using half of it. Multiple characters participating together in an action count as a single unit, and they average their score, rounding down. Each unit trying an action rolls a die whose type depends on the unit's ability, as indicated in the action dice table. The action succeeds if the unit rolls equal to or higher than the situation difficulty, so success is roll equal to or above the difficulty. A natural roll of 1 is always a fail. Each unit that fails the action gets damage equal to the situation difficulty. For each unit, damage is divided among the characters that make up the unit, rounding down with a minimum of 1 damage for each character. When the situation ends, the master evolves the adventure based on the actions and successes or failures, freely using narrations and the new situations. Because Quick and Classic has a light rule system, the master might have to make decisions in different situations. The rules system allows finding simple solutions quickly. If a situation is not meant to cause physical damage, when the characters fail they get different consequences, which makes of course a lot of sense. Now you could be thinking, there are going to be some very difficult situations, some situations that could seem impossible based on the die that you roll. So that's where the player creativity comes into play. The master can reward brilliant ideas with a small bonus to the ability of a character in action. So that way, there could be some situations that can be solved even though your level of expertise is somewhat low. You could also get a small penalty during some very difficult situations or when making a really bad choice. Finally, equipment has an important role in the character's action. In most of the cases, each piece of equipment or gear has a Valor Score. This is basically a value, which directly translates into a bonus to the ability of the character who's using the object in actions where it reasonably serves the purpose. The bonus is halved, rounding down, or null if the object has poor or no utility in that action. If wearing the object reasonably hinders the action, the Valor becomes instead a penalty. So if you are climbing or jumping or sneaking around with some very clunky armor, it's not going to be impossible, but it's going to be a bit challenging. In general, unless it is stated differently, bonuses and penalties to non-preferred actions are applied as follows. First, penalties are subtracted from ability, then ability is halved, then bonuses are added. And this is abbreviated in the famous magical formula MIHABO, which is minus halved bonus. Remember, the final rule of Quick and Classic is to use good sense. This rule system is designed to provide a solid core structure, leaving flexibility for the rulings of the table, and the master, who will always have the final word on decisions in the game. And this concludes this part of the review. In the next part we are going to talk about character creation. So as you can see, this is a system of very quick, very easy conflict resolution. And to make things easy to understand, there are plenty of examples throughout the book. Combat develops with the player characters immediately killing the enemies or getting hurt in the process. Your weapons are not going to be dealing different amounts of hit points to your enemies. They add bonuses to your roll. If you are successful, you defeat that enemy or that group of enemies. If not, you are going to take damage. And every task, every situation that you wish to handle using your skills, your proficiencies, it's the same thing. A single roll. You take into account modifiers, maybe you have the result, and what you end up with will produce a success or a failure. Thank you for watching this part of the review. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. And thank you so much to those of you that have been supporting the channel by sending drive-thru RPG gift certificates. If anyone else wants to further support the channel, the information on how to do that will be in the description below. Once again, thank you, and see you later.